So the Chief Justice will not be at the hearing tomorrow. Samuel Alito will not be at the hearing tomorrow to tell us which attacks he thinks are fair, which appears to be what he's saying. But this is the only time that I'm aware of in the history of the Senate that the Senate has asked to hear from the Supreme Court about ethics, and the answer is no.
Yeah, it's a little bit unusual, and one of the weird things about it is that judges operate under a code of conduct that's in writing. It's the Judicial Code of Conduct, and Canon 4 of the Judicial Code of Conduct reads, a judge may appear at a public hearing before a legislative body on matters concerning the administration of justice. Well, he's a judge, we're a legislative body, we're going to have a public hearing, and it was going to be on the administration of justice.
If you could have the chief there tomorrow, what would you want to ask him?
I think I'd want to explore the argument that they make that there's nothing that can be done to put any control over the Supreme Court justice's behavior because of the doctrine of separation of powers. And I'd like to ask him questions like, well, would it offend the separation of powers if the court were to set up a place where you could file an ethics complaint? And would it offend the separation of powers if the court were to set up a place where staff attorneys reviewed the complaints and sorted through them and saw which ones merited further investigation? And would it violate the separation of powers if the court had some investigators to dig out the facts and find out what was going on, and maybe even had somebody to offer an outside opinion like the chief judges of the circuit courts of appeal as to whether in their courts the conduct would violate the rules? None of that violates the separation of powers, not even close. And I think he'd have a very hard time arguing that it did. But it would really narrow, I think, the scope of a very overbroad assertion that they're making.
What would you say to viewers who are wondering, what is the future of ethics at the Supreme Court? If it has gotten this far out of control now, Supreme Court is insisting that there are absolutely no controls that can be imposed, then where does this go from here?
Well, one interesting check on the Supreme Court, an informal one, is the pressure from other judges. And I think the behavior of the Supreme Court is starting to alarm and frustrate, and in some cases infuriate, other judges. And in the grand omerta of the judicial branch of government, nobody wants to criticize them. But I know of many, many private conversations in which judges have expressed real fury that this is not being cleaned up by the court. And the difference is that they operate under the exact kind of rules that the Supreme Court could apply to itself if it wanted to. And because these are the rules that judges operate under all the time, it is clear that they don't violate the separation of powers or infringe on judicial independence, because judges do it.
What do you make of Samuel Alito's specific refusal to, in any way, even in a general way, defend Clarence Thomas? He could have said something like, I believe Justice Thomas is a perfectly ethical justice. He didn't say that.
Well, perhaps I can't read Justice Alito's mind. He's clearly a very angry man. But I suspect that he's intelligent enough to realize that the problems swirling around Justice Thomas are real. You can't have a politically active billionaire giving hundreds of thousands of dollars in undisclosed gifts of travel and hospitality to a justice while you're paying the rent for his mother and sitting him down with the guy at the center of the effort to capture the court, Leonard Leo, and pretend that there's nothing to that. It just is ludicrous.